Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Education Ministry rejects claims that it has not consulted parents for the Sixth Form Pathways program. Education Ministry has dismissed talks that it has not consulted enough with parents about new Sixth Form Pathways program. And later forward to World Cup qualifiers. I'm Giovanni Dennis and here are the details. The Education Ministry has dismissed talks that it has not consulted enough with parents about the new Sixth Form Pathways program. At a post-cabinet media briefing this morning, State Minister in the Education Ministry Robert Morgan said the ministry has held several consultation meetings. Sandy Williams reports.
Ever since the Ministry of Education announced the new Sixth Form Pathways program, stakeholders in the education sector have been raising concerns. The latest concern, not enough consultations were done with parents about the program, but the Education Ministry is rejecting that claim.
For this pathway program, we have consulted with principals. We have consulted with the National Parent Teachers Association. They have also been a part of discussions as well, CEO. So this assertion that we're not consulting with parents is patently false because the evidence does not support it.
Acting Chief Education Officer Dr. Kassan Troop added that the ministry does not interact directly with parents, but rather communicate its decisions through schools and other organizations in the education sector.
We meet with our boards and we have discussions. On that board is a parent rep who carries the voice of the parents. That's a structure of the ministry. When we have discussions with our principals operationally convene their teachers' meetings or their parent-teachers meetings. And if it is that they need us in terms of a technical support of that meeting, we participate. We have a community relations education officer who also works with our school to treat with conversation with parents if it is that they need the technical support. So we have that structure and we rely on that. So once the central ministry is requested to be present at any interface designed or convened at a school level, we do participate.
We have been very open and very transparent in our relationships with these entities. And before we make any major decision, Minister always convenes these consultative engagements where suggestions are made. And even a principal yesterday admitted on nationwide radio that he made suggestions regarding the Pathways program, and he saw that the suggestions were accepted.
Sandy Williams, TVJ News.
And Education Minister Favour Williams has responded to questions about whether the full board of the Nutrition Products Limited will be dissolved. The minister responded to the issue at this morning's media briefing. Here's O'Shane Masters.
A damning report from the Auditor General on the operations of Nutrition Products Limited. It was uncovered that former board chairman Hewart Gilzine received $125 million through his companies to provide transportation for meals to schools, as well as repairs and maintenance of the factory's equipment. And although related party transactions are not against the law, the AG's report said NPL breached the procurement guidelines in the way in which it engaged service providers. Further, board members failed to disclose connected party relationships. Following that disclosure, some members of the board were relieved of duty, while others have remained. At Wednesday's post-cabinet press briefing, Education Minister Favour Williams was asked why the full board wasn't dissolved.
You will recall that the Auditor General's report came out within the last 2 months, and those carryover board members were nominated, last year, late last year, early into this year. So it was before the Auditor General's report. Having said that, though, I've asked the board to go through the report and come back to me. They've promised a report by next week, and at that time, I will know what decisions should be taken.
Opposition spokesman on finance, Julian Robinson, last month bemoaned the frequent mismanagement of state funds by government entities, calling the report into Nutrition Products Limited NPL Petrogram 2.0. O'Shade Masters, TVJ News.
A warning was issued to a service station in Hanover following a massive gas leak last night. The Hanover Fire Department and the National Environment and Planning Agency were called in to get the situation under control. Shamela Pullen reports.
When TVJ News visited the GV service station along the Lucy Main Road in Hanover on Tuesday, there was fuel everywhere.
I mean that one of the tank, the leak. So this is the solution to the whole problem. See? Look at this. See this? This is a problem. So the whole out of such stinker gas every day. Look at this now. Look at it. Look at it. See it? Look at this. See that?
To make matters worse, persons living and working in the area worry.
A man should just light a matches or a cigarette. Whole gas station got up in flames.
And you're saying not only the gas station, the surrounding?
The surrounding got up in flames. Show the building next to them. All of that gone. See there? All that gone up in flames. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is right there. And this is going on for 3 weeks now.
TVJ News understands that on Wednesday, the Fire Department and the National Environment and Planning Agency were on the ground assessing the situation. Public Relations Officer at the Jamaica Fire Brigade, JFB, Emilio Ibang, says from the information gathered so far, there has been an overflow of what appears to be diesel fuel.
They had a broken main, a broken pipe, which leads from the holding tank to the pump. That situation was remedied, but the recent heavy rains, they are suspecting, would have caused some of the fuel that was the residual fuel to have run up, come to the surface, and spilled over onto the roadway. So the brigade was called in, and we used some sawdust to mop up the situation, bring the surface back to the way it was.
Mr. Ibang says a warning was also issued to the gas station operator for this not to reoccur. Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness has weighed in on the debate about whether government ministers can answer questions in the House of Representatives on matters that are being investigated by a commission of Parliament. Now, speaking last evening, Mr. Holness said cabinet members are obligated to answer questions properly tabled in the House. Vashan Brown has more.
In Parliament last evening, House Speaker Marisa Dalrymple Philibert reversed a ruling she made last week which allowed the Transport Minister Robert Montague to avoid answering questions on the Airport Authority of Jamaica controversy. But Opposition Leader Mark Golding said he was not ready to let the issue go.
You and I had a conversation. You indicated that you would be seeking the opinion of Legislative Council to the House on the issue that was debated fairly hotly last week, as to whether it was proper for a minister to be permitted to decline to answer questions formally tabled under the standing orders on the basis that, and we do not know whether this is fact or not, an investigation might be taking place by a commission of Parliament. I think that's a very important issue for our democracy and for this House, and I want to know if you would advise us whether that opinion has been sought.
The Legislative Council is engaged, employed by Parliament to serve the interests of all members of this House. But having reviewed the questions, I now rule that they are in order and the Minister must answer.
But Mr. Golding argued that there was a matter of principle that needed to be addressed.
The fact that you have now reversed yourself to say that the questions can be answered, and indeed it would be absurd to say otherwise, given that the minister has made a statement about the matter in the House today. I don't think that should forestall the issue being addressed, because it will come up again, and you made a ruling on it last week, which you've now reversed, and I think it's a very important point of principle.
I agree with you. Yes. It is important, and as a Speaker of the House and my own background as an attorney, I am stating that I have reviewed the question at hand, and I think it speaks for itself. I find the questions are in order.
The House Speaker later said it was her view that questions asked of government ministers should be answered once they're properly tabled. Prime Minister Andrew Holness also intervened, saying the ministers are obligated to answer questions that are posed in Parliament.
Even if the subject could possibly be or is under investigation by any of the commissions of Parliament, and we have to be just absolutely clear about that. Secondly, if you would permit me, Madam Speaker, we have always respected matters that are sub judice, and I don't believe that that is now being questioned.
In making a statement to Parliament last evening, the Transport Minister said the board of the Airports Authority of Jamaica, AAJ, is being dissolved in the wake of the controversy surrounding the unauthorized purchase of shares in First Rock Capital Holdings. Vashan Brown, TVJ News.
And it's now time for a break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. We'll have much more when you return. Welcome back. We're continuing the news. In an attempt to tackle domestic violence, Central St. James MP Heroy Clark wants to move a motion in Parliament for paternity tests to be done at birth. Mr. Clark made the comment as he made his contribution to the State of the Constituency debate last evening.
The cases of domestic violence that lead to murder are high, Madam Speaker. According to Dr. Herbert Gill, doing a study conduct here in Jamaica, one of the causes of domestic violence stems from paternal issues. Madam Speaker, as a legislator, I will be moving a motion for the DNA paternity test to be done at the birth of the child in order to determine fatherhood of that said child. This, Madam Speaker, I believe will stem majority of the domestic violence in our society.
Still in Parliament, Opposition Leader Mark Golding has taken another step aimed at clarifying the laws to allow persons to carry pepper spray for personal protection. Mr. Golding was granted approval from the House of Representatives to table 2 bills relating to the matter.
I'm therefore seeking leave of the House to introduce the following private members' bills. 1, a bill shortly entitled the Firearms Amendment Act 2021, and secondly, a bill shortly entitled the Offensive Weapons Prohibition Amendment Act 2021, which will clarify the situation in this regard. And I would ask for leave of the House, Madam Speaker, to table the bills.
Members, the question before the House is that the member be granted leave to introduce both bills mentioned. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Leave granted.
The question of whether pepper sprays were lawful took center stage after the murder of 20-year-old accounting clerk Canice Jackson in March. Mr. Golding insists it is time for the matter to be settled.
The Offensive Weapons Prohibition Act gives a distinct impression that pepper spray is not unlawful and is not subject to the treatment as an offensive weapon. However, the Firearms Act, because it has some very wide definitions in it, makes the matter unclear. And the matter has been the subject of a court decision which suggests that because of the way the Firearms Act is worded, pepper spray cannot be lawfully carried for personal protection. I believe that it's a non-toxic substance, and I believe it's important that we empower our women to protect themselves.
The island's COVID-19 positivity rate is now at 3.9%. This after 30 new cases of the virus were identified in the last 24 hours from 937 tests. The overall case count is now 89,818. Meanwhile, 5 more people have died from COVID-19. The overall death toll now stands at 2,298. 218 people are being treated for the virus at hospitals across the island. 12 are critically ill, while 29 are severely ill. In the meantime, 156 more people have recovered from the virus, bringing the total recoveries to 59,678. And for the latest in the financial world, here's Cody and Barrett.
In business news, telecoms provider Cable and Wireless Jamaica, which trades as Flow, earned $100.6 million in revenue over 3 months ending September, outperforming its pre-pandemic levels. Turnover was up 7% relative to the July to September 2020 quarter and 5% over 2019 pre-pandemic levels. Over 9 months from January to September, Flow Jamaica revenue totaled $297.3 million. That's up from $277.5 million in the comparative 2020 period. And in business internationally, China's inflation headache is getting worse. The cost of goods leaving China's factories surged by another record rate last month, and there are increasing signs that consumers are starting to feel the pain. On Wednesday, China's National Bureau of Statistics revealed that the producer price index jumped 13.5% in October from a year ago, accelerating from September's 10.7%. China's consumer price index rose 1.5% in October from a year ago, double the rate of the previous month and the fastest pace of increase since September 2020. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
And here's a preview of what's coming up in this evening's Health Report.
In this evening's health report, we look at the impact COVID-19 is having on persons living with diabetes.
It seems to be partly related to the increase in overweight, obesity, I should say. We're seeing where we're following the North American pattern of increased obesity amongst our adult population and our younger people too. And we are approaching well nigh 50% to 60% of overweight in our population.
That's the health report in Primetime News at 7. And now for today's healthy living tip. Eat less salt, eat less red and processed meat, eat more fruits and vegetables, choose healthier fats, and cut down on added sugar.
And for the latest news overseas, here's Sandy Williams. And we now head to a quick break. When we come back, Simon Preston will have the Midday Sports.
Welcome back. It's now time for Midday Sports. I'm Simon Preston. Let's head over to Abu Dhabi as England posted 166 for 4 against New Zealand in semi-final 1 of the ICC T20 World Cup in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates today. Moeen Ali top scored for England with 51. Tim Southey was the most economical Kiwi bowler with figures of 1 for 24. At sports time, New Zealand had reached 123 for 4 after 16.3 overs. Semi-final 2 between Australia and Pakistan is slated for Thursday in Dubai. To football we go now as Reggae Boys defender Greg Lee says he's delighted to be back in the Jamaican team after a long layoff due to injury. The 27-year-old left-back who last played for Jamaica against Saudi Arabia last year spoke about what he has been working on. Also, central defender Liam Moore also returns after missing the last window due to injury, and he's hoping to build on the 4 points the team picked up in October. The Jamaicans will face El Salvador in San Salvador on November 12 before hosting the United States at the National Stadium on November 16. The Reggae Boys are currently 6th in the octagon on 5 points. They are 3 points off 4th position and 5 points off 3rd. To squash we go now as a Jamaican and Caribbean #1 squash player Chris Binney has slipped 5 places to 86th in the world in the November edition of the Men's World Squash Federation rankings. Binney made this slip after a surprise first-round exit at the Cleveland Open last month. The 32-year-old is also 9th in the Americas region. Binney is hoping to move up in the rankings early next year. Binney's highest ranking is 65th, which he achieved in January of 2018. Binney is also a 9-time Caribbean and national champion. And that is it for your Midday Sports Report. I'm Simon Preston. Giovanni, it is over to you.
Thanks so much, Simon. And your expectations in the Reggae Boys game this Friday?
A quality team, especially with the inclusion of Leon Bailey for the first time in the qualifiers, Mikel Antonio into the mix as well. 4 points from these next 2 games should be the minimum expectation for the team to have any chance of at least making it to Qatar. But confidence is high in the camp and they're looking confident ahead.
By the looks of things on paper, this is our strongest team so far in the World Cup qualifiers. Is that the case?
Correct, yes. We've had players missing due to injuries and suspensions and other circumstances, but this is the best team on paper that has been compiled for these 2 fixtures, so it's all about time to execute now for the boys.
Well, best of luck to the Reggae boys. It's time for us to execute right here as well on the Midday News, and that is where we wrap things up. Join us at 7 for Primetime News. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.